Hello, everyone. Welcome to the customer briefing for BlackLight 2012 Release 4. We're very excited about this release because it not only provides, several new features, lots of issue fixes and whatnot, but it includes some very subtle UI improvements that we hope will basically improve this overall experience. So without that, we're going to get right into this and go through the entire lineup of everything that we have for you today. Some of those things that we're going to be talking about are those UI changes. We'll give you an idea of what they are and why we did them. We'll talk about some of those features like multiple windows that you can do that many people have been asking for, as well as the iOS device archiving, virtual machine parsing, and whatnot. So we'll go through all of these step by step. One of the things that to give you an idea with what we call the consolidated UI or user interface, we made a lot of changes where we basically eliminated the split between the iOS views and OS X data views. We've long advocated to all of our customers to think of iOS devices as Macs, and now what we've done is we've basically allowed for that within this seamless UI that you'll see. And so that's what we're going to walk you through. We'll walk you through a lot of these UI changes, and then we'll just go into all of the different features, so new features and fixes that we did, and I'll talk about all of those. If you do have questions, feel free to ask them in your QA pod that you see there on the right, and that I will address all of the questions at the end. So with that said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this sharing, and we're going to get right into BlackLight. Share this. You should now see basically my desktop, and BlackLight should be up. If there's any delay, I apologize. Sometimes latency can be an issue. So if there is, just let me know, and I will get into the take my time to go through each screen. So what you're looking at right now is BlackLight 2012 Release 4, and you can instantly see that there is quite a few changes. So for those of you who have been using older releases, one of the things you'll notice right off the bat is, we have these usage and activity views now, which are kind of a graphical view. Those who have been using R2 and R3 will have noticed these. So they're not new for R4, but we have enhanced them quite a bit. So you'll notice right off the bat, the first thing that's different is the toolbar has been completely changed, and this is what we consider call our consolidated user interface change. And you'll notice that what we've done is we've taken all of the views and have pushed them up into the toolbar. So the first thing I'm going to show you is basically our media view, where we have split quite a few items. So if you choose a device, in this case we'll choose an iOS device, which happens to be a 4S running iOS version 6, when you go into the media view, you would expect, in the past we called this photos, and you would see your pictures and whatnot. What we've done now is we have our pictures and our videos all consolidated into one view. We also have audio, so you can see all of the audio files that may exist on a particular device. And then you can isolate these by just pictures and or videos. So we've basically taken that media view and split it out, and you can instantly now see within this view items which have, say, GPS location data. So in this particular example that I'm showing you on Evan's phone, these are videos that we're taking, and this happens to be 2 videos here that have geolocation or location data. And you can identify that by the tag that the location tag, which comes up underneath the movie. And if you were to click on that and click on the GPS button, you'll see a relative idea of where that GPS location is. If you are on an internet-connected computer, you can always click on Show on Google Maps, and it will drill you down right into a 10-meter version of the view, so you can get a really good idea of where that location is. So that's basically the new and improved media view, where we've added the videos, the photos, and have now added audio capability. So kind of going through what we've done is, you notice within this consolidated toolbar, we have messaging, and what we've done is we've consolidated all of the messaging into one particular area. Still have quite a few things we're going to be working on this down the road, but you'll notice when you go into messaging, you'll notice you have a drop-down box called SMS messages. We also now will have iChat in there and Skype. So if there happens to be Skype application on a phone or on a computer, and you were to click on Skype, you'll notice that all of the Skype information now gets populated, and so then you can actually see the particular information that you might be interested in. So we've tried to consolidate all of the messaging areas into one. The internet hasn't changed. That's the same. Email hasn't changed, although, and I'll just hit on this very highly, the email has been vastly improved. The UI is no different. It's still basically the same user interface. The difference, though, being is that we've improved it for OS 10, for Lion, Mountain Lion, and improving it so if you do have an image of an iOS device, not a logical, but a physical image of an iOS device, it will pick up, the protected index so you can read the email from within that. We also will show you mail downloads that happen to exist and any attachments that the individual opened. So we actually will take you to the plist file for that, and so then you can actually view that data. So a lot of improvements to email to actually make it function a lot better. Contacts, you'll notice we've pulled that out of the phone view. So when you're in contacts, you'll see our typical contacts view, which you would expect to see when you were in iOS before. But now the difference is when you click onto a computer, assuming that the individual had contacts database, you'll notice that it's all in one view. So regardless of the device you're on, the view doesn't change. We still have kept the phone view here, and this is obviously to keep it unique for voice calling, memos, and voicemail, which may exist on an iOS phone type device. So you can see all of that, whether you have favorites, recents, voicemail, none of that has really changed. And then we have our applications where we've consolidated the applications view, regardless if you're on an iOS device or a image of a computer. You'll basically get all of the information for the application on all of these devices. And then the same thing with basically your calendar view. Locations, what we've done is we've separated and segregated that into actual location data. So if you have map data, you'll have map information. If there's location data, you'll have the location data. Location data exists on some of the newer OS 10 systems, specifically Mountain Lion. So if you're on a Mountain Lion system, you'll have some location data in there will display, and then if you have an image of an iOS device, you can actually see that stuff in there as well. And then going down the road, down the line, you have Notes. So Notes is going to pick up, obviously, the Notes database in iOS, but it's also going to pick up the Stickies database, the Notes database from OS 10. And then System is kind of a catch-all that we've created where it'll pull in the dictionary from Mountain Lion systems, pull in the dictionary from iOS devices. It'll show you all the Wi-Fi connections that have transpired across all of those devices as well. So this is our first stab at changing and making a consolidated UI to hopefully make it easier to find the data that you're looking for. And it's coming along pretty well, and we're actually pretty happy with it for this particular release. So some of the things that we're going to show you that we've really improved with this new UI is within the searching capability. So to give you an example, we really hype up our file filter because that's really the quickest and easiest way to find specific items that you're looking for, and we've included a bunch of saved filters. So if I just wanted to do a simple filter and I wanted to search all of my databases for a specific keyword, I'm just going to choose a kind, and I'll say I want to choose something, a database. I'll just choose all in this case, and I'll do it on Evan's phone here. And so you can instantly see I have 86 files of a SQLite database. This is not new. This has been around for a while. But what is new is now I can take this and I can search all of these databases very easily for specific keywords. And now I can go to my search function, and I can type in a new search. So we'll just call this, I'm looking for meeting information. So that's what I'm going to call the name of my search. I'm going to go ahead and search this Evan Winch Tom Bay's iPhone. Now what's new is now I can, instead of searching all the files, I can actually search only the things that match my file filter or a saved filter that I've created. So I'm going to do files that match my filter, and I'm going to say my current unsaved filter because I didn't save that one. And then I just put in my keywords as usual. So in this case, let's do, we'll do lunch, we'll do meeting. These are just two very quick examples. And we'll leave it at that, and I'll go ahead and I'll start my search. And you can see, I mean, obviously this is a very small test case. You can see I instantly got back search hits. You can see my occurrences. And this is also part of our new view where if you look here on our calendar SQLite database, there were actually 8 hits on lunch and 7 hits on meetings. So if I were to click on those, one of the new features we did is we gave you kind of a positioning of where their search hits are. So you can instantly get an idea of context before and after the search hit without just having to look in the raw hex view. So that's one of the new features. Obviously the search hit context as well as being able to search on a filter. So that's one of the new UI features that we've created that we're pretty happy about, and a lot of customers have been asking us for the ability to do that. So that's it really for the new UI stuff that I'm going to go over. I'm going to show you a lot of other new features that we've added. But before I do, one of the things I want to talk about is one of the frustrations that customers have is obviously taking time to parse, you know, the tremendous amount of data that you're having to deal with. And we spent, this whole release was dedicated really to not just the UI change, but really to fixing the issues and addressing the problems we have with parsing large data sets and having problems where, say, the disk processor would crash and just, you know, hang or whatnot, problems with unallocated. So the whole purpose for this release was to, you know, kind of finalize our UI for where we're going, but really focus in on improving our processing capability. And we've improved that process by as much as up to 80% from what we've seen in our test case scenarios. And so what that means is in a case where we had, you know, using 2012 R1, R2, and R3, where it could take literally 2 or 3 days to process, you know, 250 gig drive for both unallocated, allocated, and going through all of our processors, we've narrowed that down to about 10 hours now. So a dramatic improvement, and we're pretty proud of that. All right, so that said, so some of the new features that we've talked about. One of the biggest features people have been asking us for is when we bring in an iOS device, meaning we want to import an iPhone 5, an iPad mini, whatever it is, have the ability to save that information into an archive rather than a whole bunch of loose leaf files in a folder. And so we've done that with R4. And so I'll just show you this very quickly. I have a BlackLight demo, which is what you're looking at here. When I open up this folder, and you will see that obviously you have all of our case information. Here's our case file, and that happens to be a bundle. I'll just go into it. On Windows, you would just see it as a folder structure, and it would be the same folder structure here. So you have your case document and database, and then your partitions. Well, you notice if I go to my partitions, here's all of the unique partitions that are identified. So, for example, if I'm on Evan Winch, and I'll give it a chance for the screen to refresh, but if I go to my Evan Winch phone, you notice there's a unique identifier for that device, and it starts with FDAAD. Well, if I go down to my partition folder, you'll notice there's the same partition there. So before, what we would do with all previous release versions of BlackLight, we would store all of the files that we pulled off of the device into this folder. And now when you go into the folder, what you see is instead of having all of the loose files in the files, we actually now put it into a tar archive. And so now this archive can be stored on a network-based server, easily provided or transported to other individuals rather than a whole bunch of loose leaf files. So this is our iOS tar archive. And it works both on Windows and as well as on Mac. And so now it's just one single file that we save and read into. And it's really the easiest way to preserve all of that information from an iOS device. So that's the iOS tar archive. One of the other new features that exists that is pretty exciting actually is when you bring in an iOS image, or a Mac OS 10 image. Obviously, a lot of OS 10 users really take use of virtual machines. So, you know, if you're dealing with, say, VMware Fusions. And so as an example, you'll notice right here I have a VMDK of OS 10.5, which is Leopard. And this is a processed virtual machine that BlackLight was now able to process. And I brought this in the same way I would to bring in any disk image. I just click on the new Add button, and I would choose Add Disk Image, and I would point to my VMDK. and it would bring it in just like you see here. So I can browse around the file system. I can do everything I can as if it were a normal OS X forensic disk image. But one of the added benefits is if you have, in this case here, I have an OS X image, and I click on it. And one of the things is, like within our file filter, I can do a save search, and I can say, show me all the virtual machines that exist within this disk image. And I click on filter. And it will filter through, and you notice there are a couple of virtual machines that happen to exist in the system. There's an OS 10.5, which is the same virtual machine image that I have already processed right here in the device window. And just to show you how I can do this, I don't have to extract this file. I can read it right in from our image now. So to give you a very quick example, let's do this this Macquisition 1058, just because I know it's small and it'll process pretty quickly. I can click on this. I can click on Add, and I can say Add Selected Image File. And you'll get your evidence importation window where you can choose all of your options. In this case, I'll just do the triage. In fact, I'm going to make it really fast and uncheck everything. And I'll bring this in, and you notice it instantly brings in our 1058 Macquisition VMware machine. Now, this was small. There wasn't that much in it, but to give you an idea, you can do that from within an image. So now with BlackLight, you have the ability, any disk image that exists within your forensic image, you can point to that, you can click on Add, and you'll have a new option here on Add Selected Image, and it will automatically bring that into your BlackLight case from where now you can actually do your searching, your filtering, and whatever other options that you need to do. So that's one of the new features that we're also we're pretty excited about. So any of the virtual machines. The other thing is a lot of times, obviously, forensics isn't a perfect science, and every time we get a disk image in, a lot of times we're having to deal with corrupted disk images, or images where, say, bad guy has tried to hide his track. So he's gone in and he knew, people were coming, and so he made a concerted effort to try and get rid of his information. So he would maybe delete a partition or try and wipe it. And one of the things that BlackLight has had issues with in the past is being able to bring in that kind of information. So I have a couple of sample images here. And to give you an idea of some of the capabilities with that, I have a deleted partition. And this is just a DMG where there were 3 partitions and one of the partitions was deleted. And if I bring this into BlackLight, you'll notice right off the bat when the evidence importation window appears that you only have 2 partitions that you can bring in. And in this case, you'll notice in between those, and this is a very simplistic example, but in that case, you'll see there's free space here. And you're like, well, what is this free space? We've never given you the ability to view it up until now. And so what you can do now is you can right-click in this window, and you have the ability to edit the partitions, which is what I'm going to show you, but you also have the ability to import whatever you've selected as unallocated. So if the individual has completely wiped the drive and there are no partitions that you can find, you can bring the entire thing in as unallocated and then run your unallocated processor to carve out files. And if you wanted to create an ISO from that partition, you could do that. But what we're going to do is edit the partitions. And you'll notice that we have a partition editor, and we have a raw view of the entire disk now. So you can literally scroll through, look for those HFS partitions, and bring those in. But because this is a simple example, you notice right away we have our first sector, last sector, and then obviously the same for our second data partition. Well, it's pretty simple. I could take that free space that's in between that and add that as a new partition. So all I have to do is click the plus sign. I'll get a new partition. I'll just leave it called that. And the first sector, I just got to put in what my first sector is. And in that case, it's going to be 513.824, and that's going to be the starting offset for that sector for this partition. And then I have to set the end. So I click in there, and I'll add 718.623. And I'll click Apply. And now you notice that my evidence window changes. I now have 3 partitions. I'll go ahead and bring all of these in. I'm not going to bother doing the signature MD5 analysis right now. And you can see I've brought them in. It's all done. If I were to click on this deleted partition and go to the browser view, you notice I now have basically my keynotes, my numbers file, and pages, which for all intents and purposes were not really deleted. The partition itself was deleted, and I can bring that back. If I can look at that, I just do a quick look into it, and you can see it is a real file that I can browse. So one of the capabilities we have now is looking for deleted partitions, bringing them in as unallocated if you need to do that, and whatnot. So speaking of unallocated, one of the new features we've done is we've always done what we felt was a fairly decent job with being able to recover deleted files, and we've always given individuals the ability to choose what deleted files that they want. So in this case, in our unallocated file formats window, which you get through for our device status, we've kind of changed this around. We've always kind of given you the ability to see these particular files. And when you click on the information window, and you click on it, so like 7-zip, you're going to get an idea of what the header, the footer, where the offset is. So what you're going to basically be carving out of unallocated space. This is all well and good, but what happens when you encounter a file, or you guys know file types that we are not putting in here? And what we've done now is we've given you the ability to add your own signatures into this. And so you would add your own user-defined signature database, which I've already done here, and we can see that. And I have just one example. I just simply called Drew, but I can add another one. So let's say I wanted to recover I don't know, something that can be particular to some forensics investigations, like say a software flash or a shockwave flash file, which may exist. I could look in audio or video and see if I have any SWF type files. You can see that I don't actually have software flash embedded into here. So to add that, I would click on the plus sign. I add my extension. So we'll call it SWF for the software flash. I'm going to give it a format description. We'll just call this Macromedia flash file. And then you can give it a very long description if you want. I'll just call it Shockwave right now. I can't spell. And you can put in whatever you want is the point here. The more descriptive, the better, obviously, so people who are using this afterwards will know what you're talking about. And then you have to put in a header. You have two ways to put in a header. You can put in the raw hex header, or if you want to be more daring, you could actually do in a full regular expression header. So if you needed to match more, you could do that. In this case, I'm just going to keep it pretty simple. And I'm going to put in the header for a flash file. So that's just 465.753, which is quite honestly fairly generic, probably not the best header to look for, but that will find all Shockwave flash files, plus a whole lot more. There is no footer we're going to give to it. The offset is basically 0. If you did want to make it a regular expression, you would just have to choose this and then put in your regular expression settings. And then we just hit OK, and you'll notice that our Shockwave flash is now added and it's checked. So if I hit OK, it's now going to carve out from that particular partition that we've selected on for our software flash, plus everything else that we have checked here. So that's how you can add your own custom file signature now. And there's a couple things that we're going to be doing down the future to make it even easier. So that said, I've already mentioned it, our unallocated improvements were dramatic. I mean, we've seen, like I said, up to an 80% performance increase with unallocated. And so we spent a lot of time figuring out where the slowdowns were in making those fixes. One of the other features that people have requested of us, and it's probably because they're seeing more and more out in the field, are time machines. Time machines are something very interesting in the fact that Apple has made use of hard links in a fashion they were never designed for. And so it makes analyzing them quite difficult. And so what we've done is we spent some time taking a look at time capsule, time machine images, figuring out how Apple's dealing with these hard links, some of the soft links, and whatnot. And so now we have the ability to bring in, the sparse bundles and whatnot to bring in time capsule, time machine files. And to give you a quick idea, this is a very simple example of a time machine. Basically, it's parsing. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about with some of these hard links. So when you go to the time machine, and this happens to be an example that Derek set up, so that's why it actually says Derek's MacBook Air. When you click on one of these, you see these are the folders of the time machine that he had made. And what you're looking at are the time and dates that Time Machine made a backup. So when you go into one of those dates and times, you'll see these are the files. So these actual files here, like this DC3DD binary as an example, was backed up because obviously there was a change and it was backed up into this folder. You also notice that there's hidden folders. So as an example, this private folder, if you were to go into that, you'll notice, it's probably hard to see on your small screen unless you blow it up, but this Etsy folder, it has a small symbolic link to it. And when you click on it, you'll notice it doesn't look anything different than an Etsy folder. However, when you go into one of the files, so let's use this 6-4 conf, and you click on this file, when that file is highlighted, and when you look down, this is where some confusion can come into play. When you look at the path at the very bottom of the window, you'll notice that the path is not what you're expecting it to see. So what I mean by that is you would probably expect to see Derek's MacBook Air, the 2011 1001 Air Zebo, private, etc. folder. But what you're seeing is actual Time Machine, HFS private directory data, dir_164, and then the 60. And that's because this has been linked through a hard link to a different folder, which is actually up here. Directory 164, and you will actually see that there is the real file. So we have the ability, there can be some confusion because of the way they're doing it, I just wanted to point that out, but we do now have the ability to fully bring in time capsule, time machine images and import those for everything. So those are some of the really big highlights that we wanted to cover. Obviously a lot of UI changes, a lot of under the hood type changes, which we've talked about, and a lot of new parsing options. So with that, I'm going to basically end the presentation. I'll turn it over to any questions that anyone has. If there are no questions, what I would like to do is have you guys, if you would not mind, fill out some of the poll questions that we have at the bottom of your screen. It kind of helps us get some feedback in the direction that we want to go. So if we don't get to your questions today, feel free to email them to us, and we'll definitely get a response back to you as soon as possible. So that's all I have. I'll stop talking. I'll just leave the floor open for any questions that people may have, and we'll give it a couple minutes. Go ahead and feel free to ask your questions, and we'll get back to you. Thank you. So there's a couple questions. The first question that came in is, what's the best way to determine if BlackLight's still working or it's hung? That's actually a really good question because that happens with all software. BlackLight's no different in the sense that it is just software, and sometimes it is difficult to understand what it's doing when it hits a piece of data that it's kind of choking on. The best recommendation that I can do to answer that question is, in BlackLight, if you hold down the Shift key and you click on the About BlackLight, you'll see what you'll get is a debug console window. And the best way to tell if BlackLight is hung is when you're parsing your data, have this window open. It won't slow down. In the default state, it will not slow down your parsing that much. It's almost negligible. If you pass it some options, to either preserve a log of everything that it's done, and to give you more of the verbose output. Basically, you can actually, by doing that, you just type in verbose in the bottom of the screen. I'm sorry, it's not verbose. It's verbose mode. And you'll notice that what will happen is that your verbose mode will kick on, and then what that does is it creates a text file on your desktop called verboselog.txt, and it will write everything out to a log file. That will slow down your processing. And so the best way to really tell if BlackLight is hung is by looking at your debug console. A lot of times, and there are known issues, and it's not a bug, it's designed this way. So when you hit a corrupt, say a picture or a JPEG image or PNG or whatnot, the disk processor, which is a thing that we use behind BlackLight, will quit, and then it will restart automatically. So if you're not watching that in the debug console and you're looking at it here in the UI and you're specifically saying the device status, you might not see a progress update. And so it might look like it's hung and you don't know what it's doing. So the best way to do that is actually follow what's going on in the debug console. Sometimes progress meters won't update very quickly because, to give you a technical term, we thread those to actually make the user interface hopefully to be a little bit more user-friendly, meaning you can actually do other things while it's processing in the background. That said, BlackLight does kind of remember its state. So if you think it's hung, it's not going to hurt you to literally say close your window. Just close it, and you'll take you right back to the case manager window, and then just reopen your case. And what will happen is that BlackLight will remember where it started or last finished from, and it'll start over from there. So hopefully that answers your question. It's a very good one. We actually get that quite a bit, where it looks like it's hanging, and sometimes it quite honestly is, and killing it and restarting it is sometimes the best way to do that. Let's see some of these other questions. What can you do with a time machine backup once it's imported? Can you do file comparisons, find disks from file to file? Absolutely excellent question. Currently, we do not have a way easily to do a diff to diff from file to file. That's something that we're going to be working on in the future to kind of give you an actual view into the different files themselves. You can do that in a way where, obviously if you bring it in and you're making the hash of the files, you can actually easily see that by doing a difference within the file filter for the hashes, finding duplicate files and whatnot, you'll be able to do that. But really, just bringing in the file or the time capsule or time machine image in of itself was quite a feat. Now that you have that ability to be able to filter it and find those files is one thing. But we do need to get to the point where we can actually do diffs on our files and show those in a very consolidated, easy manner that makes it a lot more informative than basically taking the time machine here and doing a browser view. We would love to get to a point where you can literally say compare file to file, but that's not going to just be for time machine. We're going to do that basically for all files. And currently you can do that through a very simple file filter, and that's one of the things that, kind of give you a prelude to where we're going. We're going to make the file filter even more advanced, so you can do very advanced filters. So instead of doing, in this case, all or any, you'll be able to do both of those simultaneously. So you can have advanced file filters, and that will actually help you do the diffs against files that you're talking about. Support for MS Office 2011, especially Outlook, be implemented. Well, that's a very good question, and I don't want to give too much of our roadmap away. Suffice it to say, Office is technically supported now, albeit not in a view that you would like to see. And what I mean by that is we have an integral previewing mechanism which will display Office-based files, so .doc, XLS, PowerPoint, what have you, including PST files and OST files. And you can do a file filter for those types of files. So if you have a bunch of PST files and you click on preview, you're not going to get a whole bunch of individual emails in our email view. So this isn't, unfortunately, this is not where you would currently go to view Outlook PST. You would actually literally have to go to File Filter, filter for PST files, do a preview, and then you'll have a big preview file for. So that's currently how we are dealing with Office. That said, Office and Outlook is one of the things on our roadmap. So without giving too much away, that is one of the things that we will be looking at is being able to parse email so you can go to an email tab and view Outlook. It is one of the things we want to do. We just want to focus on, the things that are really our core expertise first. One of the next questions is if there's a iOS backup on a forensics image that has been imported into BlackLight, can BlackLight process it? And the answer is absolutely. So for example, I actually have that already parsed up here. If you go to this Evan Winch, this happens to be a disk image. You can basically see, it's a 20 gig image. I can find any of the backups. So if I go to my history view, we've actually made this even easier than having to go to the file filter. But if you go to the history view, you can instantly see all of the backups that exist within this image. So you can see Tom Bay's iPhone is a 4S. Here's Bobby's iPhone, which is an iPhone 3G running 3.13. I can right-click on this and import this iOS backup, and it will tell me it's going to extract it, no problem. I'll go ahead and extract it. Once it's done extracting, it will give me the option to import it, and you import it and it's done. And you notice I already have Bobby's iPhone here. This image was already imported through the same mechanism which I just showed you. And so that can happen with any iPhone image. So very good question. If bringing in an encrypted time capsule image, does it prompt for the password? Not currently. You would basically have to mount that time capsule image, put in the password, and then mount that through an attached mechanism. And you would do that through add. I'm not going to bring this in again. You would do that through add and then add attached device. So currently, if it is password protected, then you would have to do it through this mechanism. It's one of our to-do items, again, on one of our framework changes to go ahead and put that password capability in when you're bringing it in, so it would just prompt you. But currently, yes, if you have an encrypted time capsule image, you will have to mount that, take that DMG, mount it in Mac, put in the password, and then mount as an attached device, and then it will work. So hopefully those answered your questions. I think that's pretty much all the time we have for today. Thank you for participating.